I am Mason, 31 years old, and living what I thought was the American dream. After years of hard work as a software engineer, I finally had financial stability, something my younger brother Nathan never understood. My birthday dinner should have been a celebration. Instead, it became the night my family demanded I empty my savings to cover his $100,000 gambling debt. When I refused, they kicked me out. Little did they know, one carefully crafted email would change everything. Before I begin this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to see how I exposed my family's hypocrisy and rebuilt my life from scratch. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in suburban Massachusetts, the kind where everyone knew each other and kept their lawns perfectly trimmed. My father Gerald worked as a construction foreman, putting in 60-hour weeks to keep our family afloat. My mother Pamela served as an elementary school secretary, always exhausted, but somehow managing to keep dinner on the table. We were never rich, but we got by. That was the backdrop of my childhood. But it only tells half the story. The other half revolves around my younger brother Nathan. 3 years my junior at 28, Nathan was always the golden child. While I was the serious, studious kid with my nose in books, Nathan was the charming, athletic one who could make my parents laugh until tears streamed down their faces. From the moment he was born, there was an unspoken hierarchy in our household. Nathan first, everyone else second. When Nathan wanted new baseball equipment, my parents found the money. When I needed a graphing calculator for advanced math, I was told to save my allowance. When Nathan crashed the family car at 16, my parents hugged him and said, "These things happen." When I forgot to take out the trash, I was grounded for a week for being irresponsible. These patterns seemed minor in isolation, but over the years, they formed an unmistakable picture. Despite the imbalance, I put my head down and worked. I maintained a 4.0 GPA through high school, earned a partial scholarship to Boston University, and worked 30 hours weekly at a local computer repair shop to cover the rest. My parents attended Nathan's every baseball game, but made it to exactly 2 of my college events over 4 years. One was freshman orientation, which they left early because Nathan had a summer league championship game. I graduated with a computer science degree and $27,000 in student loan debt, which I tackled aggressively with my entry-level programming job. Meanwhile, Nathan dropped out of community college after 3 semesters to find himself. Finding himself apparently meant living in our parents' basement, working part-time at the local sporting goods store, and spending most nights at bars with his high school friends. My career took off faster than I expected. After 2 years of proving myself at a mid-sized tech company, I landed a senior developer position at Tech Fusion, one of the most prestigious firms in Boston. My salary tripled overnight. For the first time in my life, I had breathing room. I paid off my student loans within a year, started maxing out my retirement accounts, and began building an investment portfolio. By 28, I had saved enough for a down payment on a modest but modern 1-bedroom condo in Cambridge. Throughout these years, I maintained contact with my family despite the underlying tension. Sunday dinners, when I could make the hour drive home. Holiday gatherings. Occasional family vacations where I would take a few days off work to join them at some nearby beach house. I kept trying, kept hoping that my achievements might finally earn their recognition. The dynamic never changed, though. Nathan bounced between jobs, none lasting longer than 6 months. He tried starting a sports memorabilia business that folded after 3 months. He attempted to become a personal trainer, but never completed the certification. He briefly sold nutritional supplements in what I strongly suspected was a pyramid scheme. Through it all, my parents supported him emotionally and financially, draining their own retirement savings to keep him afloat. I was not completely heartless. When my mother needed emergency dental surgery that insurance would not cover, I paid the $6,000 bill without hesitation. When the family car died, I helped them with the down payment for a replacement. When Nathan needed $3,000 to cover rent after being laid off from his warehouse job, I sent the money with only minimal lecturing. I was, as my mother often called me, the responsible one. What she never said, but I always heard, was the unspoken second half of that statement, the boring one. As my 30th birthday approached, I decided to invest in myself. I had spent so many years being practical that I rarely indulged in luxuries. I upgraded to a 2-bedroom condo with a stunning view of the Charles River. I bought myself a modest but reliable car to replace the decade-old sedan I had driven since college. I started dating more seriously, focusing on building a future rather than just surviving the present. The week before my 31st birthday, I called my parents to invite them to dinner at Riverside Grill, my favorite steakhouse in Boston. To my surprise, they immediately accepted and suggested bringing Nathan along to make it a real family celebration. Their enthusiasm seemed unusual, given that they had forgotten my birthday entirely the previous year, until Facebook reminded them 3 days later. Still, I welcomed their apparent change of heart. Maybe finally they were seeing me as someone worth celebrating. I should have known better. In my family, nothing was ever that simple, and nothing involving Nathan came without strings attached. I made reservations at Riverside Grill for 7:30 p.m. on my birthday, a Saturday in October, when Boston shows off its spectacular fall colors. I arrived 20 minutes early to secure a prime table overlooking the water. The restaurant had a warm, upscale ambiance with dark wood paneling, soft lighting, and impeccable service. I wore my favorite navy blue suit and actually felt excited about spending the evening with my family. They arrived together 15 minutes late. My father wore a sport coat that seemed newly purchased. My mother had her hair freshly styled. Even Nathan looked uncharacteristically put together in pressed khakis and a button-down shirt. They hugged me with unusual warmth, my mother lingering a bit longer than normal. "Happy birthday, son," my father said, clapping me on the shoulder. 31 years. Hard to believe how time flies. The server took our drink orders. I selected a bottle of Cabernet to share, splurging on one that cost over $100. It was my birthday after all, and I wanted to share something special with my family. As we studied our menus, my mother kept asking questions about my job, my condo, my investments. At first I was touched by her interest, though it struck me as odd that she suddenly cared about my stock portfolio when she had never shown interest before. My father seemed particularly interested in my recent bonus, asking pointed questions about the amount and when it would be paid out. "Just curious about how my successful son is doing," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Nathan remained surprisingly quiet through the appetizers, nodding along and shooting occasional glances at our parents. He hardly touched his crab cakes, which was unusual for someone who typically devoured food, like he was still a teenage athlete. He kept checking his phone under the table, his leg bouncing nervously. When our steaks arrived, my father raised his glass in a toast. "To Mason, who has always been sharp as a tack. We are so proud of how far you have gone, and know we can always count on you when things get tough. Family first, right, son?" Something in his phrasing made my stomach tighten, but I clinked glasses and thanked him. We ate our meals, making small talk about neighborhood news and Boston sports teams. My mother seemed to grow increasingly fidgety as the meal progressed, reapplying her lipstick twice and excusing herself to the restroom 3 times. After the server cleared our plates and brought coffee, my father cleared his throat and looked at my mother, who nodded slightly. Nathan suddenly became intensely interested in stirring his coffee. "Son," my father began, his voice taking on the serious tone he used when discussing car insurance or mortgage rates, "we need to talk about something important. A family matter." I set down my coffee cup. "What is it?" My mother reached across the table to touch my hand. "Honey, you know how we have always been there for each other, through thick and thin." "Sure," I said cautiously, noticing how she emphasized always, as if preparing to cash in some long-held favor. My father continued. "The thing is, Nathan has gotten himself into a bit of a situation." He looked at my brother. "Nathan, why not tell Mason yourself?" Nathan's face flushed red as he looked up from his coffee. "I messed up, bro. Big time." His voice cracked slightly. "I got into some gambling a while back. Sports betting mostly. Started small, just making games more interesting. But then I started losing. Tried to win it back, lost more." My brain quickly processed what was happening. This was not a birthday dinner. This was an ambush. A carefully orchestrated intervention with me as the target. "How much, Nathan?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the anger beginning to simmer. He swallowed hard. $100,000. The number hung in the air like a toxic cloud. $100,000. More than my parents made in a year combined. almost half of what remained in my savings after my condo purchase. And these are not nice guys I owe. Nathan continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. They have been threatening me, showing up at work, calling at all hours. My father jumped in. We would not ask if it was not serious, son. These people came to our house last week, said they would take the house if Nathan did not pay. My mother squeezed my hand tighter. We put up the house as collateral for a loan to cover some of his earlier debts. We did not know it would get this bad. The pieces fell into place. The unusual interest in my finances, the new clothes, the convenient timing right after my bonus payout. They had planned this entire evening as a financial shakedown disguised as a birthday celebration. Let me understand, I said slowly. You want me to give Nathan $100,000 to cover gambling debts to what sounds like loan sharks? Money he lost through his own choices. Is that correct? My mother's eyes welled with tears. We know it is a lot to ask, honey, but he is your brother. Family takes care of family. And where was this family support? When I worked through college? When I ate ramen for dinner 3 nights a week to save money for textbooks? When I needed a cosigner? For my first apartment, and you said no because it was too much. Responsibility. My voice remained level, but the words came out sharp. My father's face hardened. That was different. You were always independent. Nathan needs more support. Nathan needs consequences, I countered. Have you considered gambling addiction counseling? Or speaking with a bankruptcy attorney? There are legal ways to handle this that do not involve emptying my savings. Nathan slammed his hand on the table, causing the silverware to jump. I do not have time for counseling, Mason. These guys want their money now. They are not going to wait for me to have some breakthrough on a therapist's couch. Lower your voice, I hissed, noticing nearby diners glancing our way. This is a public place. So, that is it, my father demanded. You will not help your own brother after everything we have done for you. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. I am willing to help Nathan find professional help. I will pay for addiction counseling. I will connect him with a lawyer who specializes in debt resolution. But I will not hand over $100,000 to throw at a problem that will only repeat itself without addressing the underlying issues. My mother began to cry softly. Please, Mason, we could lose our home. A home you put at risk by enabling Nathan's behavior, I pointed out. I am sorry, but the answer is no. I will not bankrupt myself to temporarily fix a problem that Nathan created and that he needs to solve himself. The remainder of the dinner passed in tense silence. When the check came, I paid it despite my father's half-hearted offer to split it. As we walked to the parking lot, my father gripped my arm. This conversation is not over, he said. Come to the house tomorrow. We need to figure this out as a family. I nodded, knowing the next confrontation would be even more difficult. The next evening, I drove to my parents' house with a knot in my stomach. The modest colonial-style home where I grew up looked exactly the same as it always had, right down to the slightly crooked mailbox that my father had been promising to fix for at least a decade. I parked behind Nathan's car, a relatively new Jeep that he had somehow managed to afford despite his perpetual financial troubles. That should have been my first clue about where some of his gambling money had gone. My mother answered the door with puffy eyes and a forced smile. Thank you for coming, honey, she said, ushering me into the living room where my father and Nathan already sat waiting. The living room felt smaller than I remembered, crowded with the oversized furniture my parents had purchased during a brief period of financial stability when I was in high school. Family photos lined the mantel, most featuring Nathan's sporting achievements. My academic awards and college graduation photo were relegated to the far end, partially hidden behind a decorative vase. My father did not stand when I entered. He sat in his recliner, arms crossed, expression grim. Sit down, Mason, he said, gesturing to the couch across from him. We need to talk sense into you. I remained standing. I think I was pretty clear yesterday. I am willing to help Nathan find professional assistance for his gambling addiction, but I am not giving him $100,000. Nathan snorted. Gambling addiction. Way to make it sound like I am some loser who cannot control himself. Can you control yourself? I asked pointedly, because $100,000 in debt suggests otherwise. Do not talk to your brother that way. My mother scolded, taking a seat beside my father. He is going through a difficult time. A difficult time of his own making, I countered, finally sitting on the edge of the couch. And from the looks of that new Jeep outside, not all his money went to gambling debts. Nathan leapt to his feet. You think you are so much better than me, do not you, Mr. Perfect, with his fancy tech job and his Riverview condo? This is not about me being better than you, I said calmly. This is about responsibility and consequences. You made choices, Nathan. Bad ones. Now you need to deal with the fallout like an adult. My father leaned forward. Your brother made mistakes. Yes, but we are family. Family stands together when things get tough. Where was this family solidarity when I needed it? I asked. When I worked 30-hour weeks while carrying a full course load. When I graduated with debt that I paid off myself. When I ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner to save money. Oh, here we go again with the poor Mason story, Nathan mocked. We have all heard it 1,000 times. You had it so hard, worked so much, blah blah blah. My mother's expression hardened unexpectedly. We gave you everything we could, Mason. We put a roof over your head, food on the table, clothes on your back. That is called being a parent, Mom, I replied. That is the bare minimum. We drove you to those science competitions, my father added. Paid for your AP tests. Bought you that computer when you started high school. The computer that was 4 years old and secondhand, I reminded him. Meanwhile, Nathan got a brand new phone every year and the latest gaming systems. Nathan needed those things for his social development, my mother said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. You were always so independent. The conversation was going in circles. I took a deep breath and tried a different approach. How long have you been planning this? I asked. This whole birthday dinner ambush. When did you decide to target my savings? An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My parents exchanged glances. We did not target anything, my father finally said, though his eyes drifted away from mine. We simply reached out to family in a time of need. On my birthday, I pointed out, after asking detailed questions about my bonus and investments, this was planned. Fine, Nathan interjected. We knew about your bonus from that Facebook post you made last month. Dad thought your birthday would be a good time because you would be in a generous mood. Is that what you want to hear? The casual admission stunned me. They had deliberately chosen my birthday not to celebrate me, but because they thought I would be more likely to hand over my hard-earned money. The manipulation was breathtaking in its callousness. How long have you known about Nathan's gambling debts? I asked my parents. More uncomfortable glances. My mother fiddled with her wedding ring. 6 months, my father admitted. It started smaller. We helped with the first few debts, took out a second mortgage, but it kept growing. And you never thought to get him help, to address the actual problem, instead of throwing money at it. We tried talking to him, my mother said defensively. But these things take time. And now, time has run out. So instead of dealing with it properly, months ago, you let it escalate to the point where dangerous people are threatening you, and now you expect me to clean up the mess I stood up again, pacing the small living room. This is insane. You are all living in a fantasy world. Nathan's face darkened. Not all of us can be perfect like you, Mason. Some of us make mistakes. Making mistakes is human, I agreed. Expecting others to sacrifice their financial security to bail you out time after time is selfish and entitled. Entitled, Nathan shouted, stepping toward me aggressively. You have always been Dad's special little genius. The pride of the family. Do you know what it was like growing up in your shadow? Every teacher expecting me to be as smart as you. Every report card comparison. I laughed in disbelief. In my shadow? Are you kidding me? Everything in this house revolved around you. Your games, your friends, your needs. Enough, my father thundered, standing up. Mason, I have never been this disappointed in you. After everything this family has done for you, this is how you repay us, by turning your back when we need you most. What exactly has this family done for me? I asked quietly. Besides the basic obligations of parenthood, name one significant sacrifice you made for my benefit. My father's face reddened. We supported your education. I got scholarships and worked through college with zero financial help from you, I reminded him. We drove you to that programming camp when you were 14, my mother offered. The free camp that was held at the community center, 3 blocks away. The one you dropped me off at on your way to Nathan's baseball tournament in Vermont. The tournament you stayed at overnight while I walked home alone. Silence fell again, heavier this time. Mason. My father finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. Either you help your brother out of this situation, or you are no longer welcome in this family. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. I stared at him, waiting for some sign that he did not mean it, that this was just an emotional outburst. His expression remained stony, unyielding. I turned to my mother, hoping to see some softening, some recognition of the unfairness of this ultimatum. Instead, she delivered the final blow. Sometimes I wish Nathan had been our only child, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. At least he understands what family means. In that moment, something broke inside me. A lifetime of seeking approval, of making excuses for their favoritism, of maintaining ties despite the imbalance. All of it shattered. I felt oddly calm as I picked up my jacket from the couch. I will not be blackmailed or emotionally manipulated, I said evenly. Not even by family. Especially not by family. So that is your answer, my father demanded. You choose money over blood. I choose self-respect and boundaries over enabling destructive behavior, I corrected him. Nathan needs help, not a bailout. But you cannot see that because you have never been able to see him clearly. Get out, Nathan snarled. Get out and do not come back, you selfish jerk. I looked around the living room one last time at the home that had never fully felt like mine, at the family that had never fully accepted me. Goodbye, I said simply, and walked out the door. As I got into my car, I realized with a strange clarity that it was still my birthday. Some gift this had turned out to be. Yet underneath the pain and anger, I felt something unexpected: relief. For the first time in my life, I was free of the obligation to seek approval I would never receive. I drove back to Boston in silence. No music, no phone calls, just the sound of tires on asphalt and the weight of 31 years of family history being rewritten in my mind. The first few days after the confrontation passed in a blur. I called in sick to work on Monday, something I had rarely done in my career. I could not focus on code or meetings while my mind kept replaying my mother's words. Sometimes I wish Nathan had been our only child. By Tuesday, I forced myself back to the office. Though colleagues commented on my distracted demeanor, I made excuses about a minor illness, not ready to share the truth that my family had effectively disowned me for refusing to hand over my savings. The messages started Wednesday morning. My father sent a text that read simply, "The people Nathan owes are getting impatient. This is your last chance to do the right thing." No apology, no acknowledgement of their ultimatum, just more pressure. I did not respond. Thursday brought a voicemail from my mother, her voice wavering between anger and tears. "Mason, I do not understand how you can be so cold. Your father barely slept last night worrying about these men coming back to the house. Is your money really worth more than our safety, than your brother's life? Please call us." Again, I did not respond. Their safety concerns were real, but addressing the symptom rather than the cause would solve nothing. Nathan needed professional help, not another bailout that would disappear into the black hole of his addiction. By Friday, the tone had changed. My father's new message was explicit. Your mother is heartbroken. You have made your choice. Do not contact us again until you are ready to be part of this family. The weekend brought a new wave of messages, this time from extended family. My Aunt Brenda called clearly, having heard a version of events that painted me as the villain. "I always thought you were a good boy," she said. "But to abandon your family when they need you? After all they sacrificed for you? I never expected such selfishness, Mason." My cousin Derek sent a text. "Dude, how can you let loan sharks threaten your own parents? Family first, man." One by one, the calls and messages revealed the narrative my parents had created. According to their version, I was a wealthy tech executive hoarding money while my poor brother faced dangerous criminals and my innocent parents risked losing their home. The fact that Nathan's gambling addiction had created the situation, or that my parents had enabled it for months, was conveniently omitted. The distortion of truth hurt almost as much as the original betrayal. People who had known me my entire life were suddenly viewing me as selfish and cold, all based on a carefully crafted lie. Work suffered, as my concentration fragmented. I made coding errors I would normally never make. In a team meeting, my project manager asked if everything was all right after I zoned out during an important client discussion. Just some family stuff, I mumbled, embarrassed by my lack of professionalism. Sleep became elusive. I would lie awake replaying conversations, thinking of all the things I should have said. Sometimes I imagined giving in, transferring the money, being welcomed back into the family fold. Other times I fantasized about confronting them with the decades of favoritism and emotional neglect. By the third week, I recognized I needed help processing what had happened. I found a therapist specializing in family trauma and booked an appointment. Dr. Allison Kent had a quiet office in downtown Boston with comfortable chairs and a view of a small courtyard garden. She listened without judgment as I detailed the birthday dinner ambush, the confrontation at my parents' house, and the subsequent family messaging campaign. What you are describing sounds like a long-standing family dynamic that has finally reached a breaking point, she observed after I finished. The expectation that you would sacrifice your financial security to enable your brother's addiction is problematic on multiple levels. Am I wrong to refuse? I asked, still questioning myself despite everything. They are my family. Family relationships should be reciprocal, she replied. Based on what you have shared, there seems to be a significant imbalance in how support and resources are distributed in your family. Your brother receives unconditional support, regardless of his behavior, while you receive conditional approval based on your utility to the family. We spent several sessions unpacking my childhood experiences, identifying patterns of favoritism and the roles we had all been assigned. Nathan was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was the responsible one expected to achieve, but never celebrated for it. This birthday confrontation did not happen in isolation, Dr. Kent explained during our fourth session. It is the culmination of family dynamics established decades ago. Your refusal to pay represents the first time you have truly broken the pattern, which is why the reaction has been so extreme. As therapy helped me gain perspective, a disturbing discovery shook my tentative equilibrium. While scrolling through Instagram one evening, I came across a photo posted by one of Nathan's friends. There was my brother grinning widely beside his Jeep, which now sported expensive new custom wheels. The caption read, "New rims for the birthday boy, Nathan always rolls in style." The post was dated just 2 weeks after our confrontation, when Nathan was supposedly in danger from loan sharks demanding immediate payment. Something did not add up. A bit more social media investigating revealed photos of Nathan at a local bar buying rounds for friends. Another showed him at a Patriots game in seats that I knew cost hundreds of dollars. For someone in desperate financial straits, my brother seemed to be living remarkably well. I mentioned these discoveries to Dr. Kent at our next session. "It sounds like there may be more to the situation than what your family presented to you," she noted. "Have you considered that the urgency might have been exaggerated to pressure you into paying?" The thought had crossed my mind, but seeing the evidence made it impossible to ignore. Either the debt situation was not as dire as they had claimed, or money had been found elsewhere. Neither possibility reflected well on my family's honesty. As I continued therapy, the extended family pressure campaign intensified. My Uncle Robert called to tell me my parents were considering selling their house to pay off Nathan's debt. Cousin Amy reported that my mother was having anxiety attacks. Aunt Brenda claimed my father's blood pressure had spiked dangerously due to stress. Each call followed the same pattern: emphasize how much my parents were suffering, detail the severe consequences they faced, and implicitly or explicitly blame me for not solving the problem. No one ever mentioned Nathan's responsibility or questioned why my parents were protecting him at such cost to themselves. My breaking point came 7 weeks after my birthday. A former neighbor from my childhood contacted me through Facebook with troubling news. "I do not want to get involved in family business," Mrs. Carpenter wrote, "but I thought you should know. Your parents took out a second mortgage last week. I work at the bank and process the paperwork. They seemed very stressed. I hope everything is okay with your family." A second mortgage. After all the drama, all the demands that I empty my savings, they had found another way to enable Nathan's addiction. They had put their financial future at even greater risk, rather than address the real problem. I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger at the manipulation, sadness at the waste, but most surprisingly, a growing sense of resolution. The situation had clarified something I had been struggling to accept. My family's dysfunction ran too deep for me to fix. No amount of money would change the underlying dynamics. That night I lay awake considering my options. I could continue as I had been maintaining distance, while they spread misinformation about me to anyone who would listen. I could attempt reconciliation on their terms, which would mean accepting their narrative and surrendering my boundaries. Or I could take control of the story and stand up for myself. By morning I knew what I needed to do. It was time to break the silence and tell my truth. Before taking any action, I needed to fully understand what I was dealing with. My family had spent weeks crafting a narrative that painted me as the villain, and undoing that damage would require careful consideration. This was not about revenge. It was about truth and self-preservation. I began researching my family's community standing. My parents had lived in the same town for over 35 years and had deep connections. My father served on the town council and was active in the local chamber of commerce through his construction business. My mother volunteered at their church and was currently organizing the annual holiday charity fundraiser, a high-profile event attended by local business leaders and politicians. Nathan, despite his financial irresponsibility, worked for my father's construction company as a project manager. The position had been created specifically for him after his previous job let him go for chronic lateness. His job gave him access to company accounts and resources, which raised questions about how deeply his gambling might have affected the business. I created a spreadsheet tracking the family's public activities through social media and local news mentions. My mother appeared in church bulletin photos organizing the fundraiser committee. My father was quoted in a town council meeting about commercial zoning regulations. Nathan was tagged at community softball games sponsored by the construction company. Their public image remained intact completely, at odds with the crisis they had described to me. If dangerous loan sharks were truly threatening them, why were they proceeding with normal community activities? Why was my mother focusing on a charity event rather than her supposedly endangered home? I reached out to Ryan, my closest friend since college, and the only person I had fully confided in about the situation. We met at his apartment on a Saturday afternoon, away from potential mutual acquaintances who might report back to my family. I need an outside perspective, I told him, after updating him on my discoveries. Am I missing something here? Am I the unreasonable one? Ryan, a corporate attorney with a talent for cutting through emotional noise, shook his head firmly. Mason, what they did was textbook emotional manipulation. They ambushed you on your birthday, tried to guilt you into covering a gambling debt, then ostracized you when you refused. Now they are smearing your reputation while apparently finding money elsewhere. You are not the villain in this story. But they are still my family, I said, voicing the doubt that continued to nag at me. Should I just let it go, move on, and accept that this is how they see me? Would you advise a friend to accept being treated this way? Ryan countered. Would you tell a client to allow false information about them to spread unchecked? He had a point. In any other context, I would advocate for setting boundaries and correcting misinformation. Why should family be exempt from basic standards of respect and honesty? What are you considering? Ryan asked. I am thinking about sending an email, I said, to extended family and close friends who have been contacting me, just laying out my side of the story with supporting evidence. Ryan nodded thoughtfully. If you do this, stick to verifiable facts. No emotional accusations, no speculation, just the timeline of events and documented evidence, and be prepared for backlash. Over the next week, I carefully drafted the email. I included a clear timeline, the birthday dinner, ambushed the conversation at my parents' house, the ultimatum, and the subsequent messaging campaign. I attached bank statements showing previous financial help I had provided to my family, including my mother's dental surgery and the car down payment. I included screenshots of Nathan's social media showing his continued spending despite the supposed debt crisis. I added the information about the second mortgage my parents had taken out, careful to protect Mrs. Carpenter's identity, as the source. Most powerfully, I included text messages from my parents that revealed the manipulation tactics. My father's threat to cut me off from the family. My mother's statement about wishing Nathan had been an only child. The repeated demands for money, without acknowledgement of Nathan's responsibility. The email took shape as a factual account rather than an emotional appeal. I ended with a simple statement: I share this information not to cause further division, but to correct the false narrative that has been spread about me. I refuse to give Nathan $100,000, not because I do not care about my family, but because enabling his gambling addiction would cause more harm than good. I offered to pay for addiction counseling and legal advice offers that were rejected in favor of a financial bailout. I believe true family support means helping each other become better, not enabling destructive behavior. Before sending it, I sat with the draft for 3 days, questioning my motivations and potential consequences. Was this an act of necessary truth-telling or petty revenge? Would it create a path to healthier relationships, or burn bridges permanently? I reviewed it with Dr. Kent during our session. Correcting misinformation about yourself is reasonable, she advised. Just be clear about your expectations. This email will not likely change your parents' perspective or behavior. Its value is in allowing you to stand in your truth and provide context to others who have only heard one side of the story. I made final revisions, removing any language that seemed accusatory or emotionally charged. The finished product was straightforward and factual, letting the evidence speak for itself. My recipient list included extended family members who had contacted me, family friends who had known me since childhood, and a few key community members who had relationships with both my parents and me. I specifically included my parents' pastor, several town council members, and the chairs of my mother's fundraising committee. I did not include my parents or Nathan directly, knowing they would see it through others. With my finger hovering over the send button, I received one final message from my mother that cemented my decision. It read, "Your selfishness has broken this family. I hope your money keeps you warm at night, since you have chosen it over the people who gave you life." I took a deep breath and clicked send. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, my phone began buzzing with notifications. Within hours, my inbox filled with replies. By the end of the day, the carefully constructed narrative my family had built began crumbling under the weight of truth. The first reply came from my Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, who had always shown me more understanding than most family members. "Mason, I had no idea what really happened. Your mother told me you had abandoned the family in their time of need. I should have known there was more to the story. I am so sorry for the message I left you last month. Please call me when you feel ready to talk." Uncle James, my father's brother, wrote a shorter but equally supportive note. "Gerald always did favor Nathan to a fault. This gambling situation sounds serious. You were right to suggest professional help, rather than throwing good money after bad. Stand your ground, nephew." Some replies were less sympathetic. Cousin Derek doubled down. "Whatever, man. Blood is blood. You still should have helped." But such responses were surprisingly rare. The most significant reaction came from Pastor Michael at my parents' church. "Mason, I appreciate you sharing this difficult family situation. While I normally would not involve myself in private family matters, the fact that your mother is leading our charity fundraiser and representing our church community makes this relevant to my duties as pastor. I will be speaking with your parents to hear their perspective. Please know that I am praying for healing for your entire family." By the following morning, the ripple effects became apparent. My Aunt Susan called to fill me in on the family response. "Your mother is furious," she reported. "She called me screaming about loyalty and how you had betrayed family secrets. I asked her if what you had written was untrue, and she could not point to a single factual error. She just kept saying you had no right to air dirty laundry." "And Nathan?" I asked. "That is the interesting part," Susan said. "According to your cousin Michael, who works at the same construction supplier as your father Nathan, came into work yesterday clearly agitated. Apparently, some business partners of your father's are asking questions about company finances after seeing your email. There might be more to this gambling situation than even you know. The community fallout continued throughout the week. My mother stepped down from leading the holiday fundraiser, citing personal matters requiring her attention. My father was notably absent from the town council meeting, the first he had missed in 3 years according to the local newspaper's website. More revelations emerged as people began connecting dots I had not even considered. A former high school classmate who worked at the bank handling my father's business accounts reached out privately. "I cannot share specifics due to confidentiality," she wrote, "but there was an internal audit of your father's business accounts last month. Rumors around the office suggested discrepancies involving project funds. After reading your email, I wonder if Nathan's gambling might be connected. Just thought you should know people are asking questions that predated your email." 10 days after sending the email, I received an unexpected call from Thomas, a cousin on my father's side who had moved to California years ago. We had been close as children, but had drifted apart in adulthood. "Your email made its way to me through family channels," he said. "I need to tell you something. 5 years ago, Nathan called me claiming he needed $15,000 for emergency surgery. Said the insurance was denying coverage and he was in severe pain. I sent the money only to discover later through social media that he was on a gambling trip to Vegas that same weekend. When I confronted him, your parents got involved, claiming I had misunderstood and demanding I keep quiet about it to avoid hurting the family. I had no idea. I told him, stunned, that Nathan's pattern extended beyond our immediate family. There are others, Thomas said. Nathan has worked his way through most of the family with various emergency stories. Many relatives were too embarrassed to admit they had been conned, but your email has opened the floodgates. You are not alone in this, Mason. That conversation marked a turning point in my perspective. What I had viewed as a personal family conflict revealed itself as something larger and more systemic. Nathan had been running various schemes for years, with my parents acting as enablers and damage control. The vindication felt bittersweet. While it validated my decision to stand firm, it also revealed the depth of dysfunction in my family system. No wonder my parents had reacted so extremely to my refusal. I had not just declined to bail out Nathan. I had threatened the elaborate ecosystem of enablement they had built around him. 2 weeks after the email, I received a message from my father's business partner, Harold, a man I had known since childhood. Mason, I wanted you to know that we have initiated a formal audit of the company books. Preliminary findings suggest financial irregularities involving Nathan's project management accounts. Your father has taken a leave of absence while this is sorted out. This is difficult for everyone involved, but necessary for the health of the business. I always respected your integrity, and now I understand it even more. My mother's friend Diane, from the church committee, wrote, "The church leadership held an intervention with your parents yesterday. Pastor Michael felt it necessary after learning the extent of Nathan's gambling and your parents' enabling behavior. They are resistant to acknowledging the problem, but agreed to attend family counseling. I thought you would want to know." The most surprising communication came in the form of a threatening text from Nathan, who, "You ruined everything with your stupid email. Dad's business partners are freezing him out. Mom is a mess. Everyone is asking questions I cannot answer. You think you are so smart, but you will regret this. Family is supposed to protect each other, not expose each other." I did not respond, but I saved the message as further evidence of his perspective. In his mind, family loyalty meant covering up problems rather than addressing them. Protection meant enabling rather than helping. No wonder we had reached such an impasse. For a brief time, I questioned whether sending the email had been too harsh. Had I caused unnecessary pain to my parents? Had I taken revenge, rather than simply correcting misinformation? My therapy sessions with Dr. Kent helped me process these doubts. What your email did, she explained, was remove the secrecy that allowed the dysfunction to continue. Systems like your family's rely on silence and isolation to maintain unhealthy patterns. By speaking your truth factually and without malice, you created an opportunity for change, even if that change is painful in the short term. 3 weeks after sending the email, I received an unexpected invitation. My Aunt Susan and Uncle Robert were hosting a family gathering and specifically requested my presence. Many family members would like to reconnect with you, Susan wrote. No pressure, but you would be very welcome. I attended with trepidation, unsure of the reception I would receive. To my surprise, I was greeted with warmth by relatives who had previously been cold or distant, based on my parents' narrative. Several pulled me aside to share their own stories of Nathan's financial manipulations and my parents' enabling behavior. We all knew something was off, my cousin Jennifer confided, but no one wanted to be the one to say it out loud. Your email gave people permission to acknowledge what many had suspected for years. My Uncle Robert pulled me into his study for a private conversation. The family is planning an intervention with your parents, and Nathan, he informed me. Pastor Michael is coordinating with a family addiction specialist. We wanted you to know, though, we understand if you choose not to participate, given everything that has happened. I considered the invitation carefully. I need to think about it, I told him honestly. I support the intervention, but my presence might make it about our conflict rather than Nathan's gambling. He nodded understandingly. Whatever you decide, know that many of us regret not seeing the situation clearly sooner. You stood your ground at great personal cost. That took courage. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the unexpected turns my life had taken since my birthday. What had begun as a family ultimatum had evolved into a community reckoning with years of hidden dysfunction. The truth once spoken had taken on a life of its own. The vindication I felt was not about being proven right, but about finally being seen clearly. For the first time in my life, my perspective was being heard and validated rather than dismissed or minimized. That recognition, more than any apology or reconciliation, began the healing process I had not realized I so desperately needed. 6 months passed since the night my family kicked me out on my birthday. Winter yielded to spring, bringing new growth to Boston, as the Charles River thawed and the first tentative buds appeared on the trees outside my condo windows. The seasonal renewal mirrored my own gradual healing process, uneven, but steadily progressing towards something healthier. In those months, I built what Dr. Kent called my chosen family. Ryan remained a steadfast presence, inviting me to holiday gatherings when he knew I might be feeling the absence of family traditions. My coworker Jasmine, after learning snippets of my situation, made sure to include me in weekend hiking trips and dinner parties. My neighbor David became a regular dinner companion our Tuesday takeout nights, providing simple but reliable connection. These relationships lacked the complicated history of family ties, but offered something my birth family rarely had: mutual respect and genuine support, without manipulation or conditions. Therapy continued weekly, then bi-weekly, as I developed stronger coping mechanisms. Dr. Kent helped me navigate the complex emotions that surfaced as I established my new normal. Grief does not follow a linear path, she reminded me during a particularly difficult session after I dreamed about childhood family vacations. You are mourning the family you wished you had as much as the family you have lost contact with. Both forms of grief are valid. Professionally, I channeled my energy into work with renewed focus. The project I had been struggling with during the initial family crisis became a showcase for my problem-solving abilities. My team lead nominated me for a Company Innovation Award, which came with a promotion to senior architect and a substantial raise. Your ability to think systematically while maintaining attention to detail is exceptional, my director commented during my performance review. Whatever clicked into place these past few months has taken your work to another level. What had clicked, though I did not share this with him, was a newfound confidence in my own judgment. After standing firm against enormous pressure from my family workplace, challenges seemed manageable by comparison. I no longer second-guessed my decisions or sought excessive validation before moving forward with solutions. The increased income allowed me to make another significant change. I sold my Riverside condo, which still carried emotional associations with the family drama, and purchased a smaller but architecturally unique loft in a converted factory building in Cambridge. The space had exposed brick walls, industrial windows, and a rooftop garden shared by the building residents. It felt like a fresh start, a home chosen entirely for my preferences, rather than to impress others. Contact with my immediate family remained limited, but not entirely severed. 2 months after the email, my father sent a brief message: "The business audit is complete. Nathan has been removed from company accounts." We are working with a financial advisor on restructuring company oversight. This is not an apology, but you should know your email forced necessary changes. I appreciated his honesty, if not his continued resistance to acknowledging the deeper issues. I replied simply, I am glad positive changes are happening. I wish you well with the restructuring. My mother's communication came 3 months after the intervention organized by extended family. Her message was more personal, but still guarded. The counselor says, I need to examine my parenting patterns. This is difficult to hear. Nathan has entered a gambling addiction program after Pastor Michael made it a condition of continued church support. I am not ready to discuss everything in your email, but I want you to know we are addressing some of the issues you raised. These tentative communications did not constitute reconciliation, but they represented small steps toward acknowledgement of the reality I had exposed. I responded with equal caution, maintaining firm boundaries, while leaving the door slightly ajar. The most surprising development came from Nathan. After 4 months of silence, he sent a message that showed the first glimmers of self-awareness I had ever witnessed from him. The program counselors make us take responsibility for our actions as part of recovery, he wrote. I am supposed to make amends where possible. I am not ready to talk directly, but I need to acknowledge that I put everyone in an impossible situation with my gambling. I manipulated mom and dad, and they tried to manipulate you. I am working on my issues. That is all I can say right now. I sat with his message for several days, before responding, to if. Thank you for acknowledging that. Recovery is hard work. I respect that you are doing it. Brief as they were, these exchanges allowed me to release some of the anger I had been carrying. My family members were taking small steps toward accountability, even if complete reconciliation remained distant. Meanwhile, connections with extended family flourished in unexpected ways. My Aunt Susan and I began a tradition of monthly video calls. Uncle Robert invited me to his lake house for a weekend fishing trip. Cousin Thomas, during a business trip to Boston, met me for dinner, and we rekindled our childhood friendship. Most surprisingly, I received a call from Uncle William, my father's estranged brother whom I had rarely seen growing up. Family rumors had always painted him as the black sheep, someone who had abandoned family obligations for selfish reasons. Your email made its way to me through Susan, he explained when we met for coffee. Your situation sounded eerily familiar. 20 years ago, I refused to bail out your father's first business venture, which was failing due to mismanagement. Your grandparents sided with him, completely called me heartless and greedy. We barely spoke for decades. I had no idea, I told him, realizing how family narratives could persist for generations. Dad always said, you moved away because you did not care about family. William smiled sadly. That was easier than admitting he had driven me away by demanding financial sacrifices I could not make. Sound familiar? Our conversation revealed patterns of favoritism, and enabling that extended back to my father's childhood. My grandfather had apparently protected my father from consequences, just as my parents now protected Nathan. The cycle had continued uninterrupted until I refused to participate. Breaking generational patterns takes tremendous courage, William said as we parted. It is lonely work but necessary. You are not alone in this, Mason. Not anymore. Beyond family relationships, I began building new traditions to replace those I had lost. Instead of enduring tense family holiday gatherings, I joined Ryan's family for Thanksgiving and organized a Christmas potluck for friends without local family. I volunteered at a financial literacy program teaching basic budgeting and investment principles to high school students. On my 32nd birthday, exactly 1 year after the fateful dinner that had triggered everything I hosted, a small celebration at my new loft. The gathering included only people who genuinely supported my growth and respected my boundaries. As we shared food and conversation on my rooftop garden under string lights, I realized I had created something valuable from the wreckage of family expectations, authentic connection based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Late in the evening, I received an unexpected text from my mother. Thinking of you on your birthday. Things are different this year. Nathan is 6 months into recovery. Your father and I are still in counseling. We have a long way to go, but we are trying to understand where things went wrong. I hope you are well. It was not an apology, not yet a reconciliation, but it was acknowledgement. A year ago, I would have analyzed every word looking for hidden manipulation or demands. Now, I could accept it as a small step, without expecting immediate resolution. I replied simply, "Thank you. I am well. I hope the counseling is helpful for all of you." As my friends left that evening, Elise, a woman I had been dating for several months, stayed behind to help clean up. We had met at a photography class I had joined as part of my effort to develop interests outside of work, and her straightforward nature had immediately appealed to me. "You seem reflective tonight," she observed, as we washed dishes side by side. "Birthday thoughts?" "Just taking stock," I replied. "A year ago today, my family essentially disowned me over money. I never imagined I would be in this place now feeling more whole, despite having less family contact." She bumped her shoulder against mine gently. "Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately free us. You stood up for yourself when it would have been easier to give in. That takes integrity." Her words echoed what I had gradually come to understand through months of therapy and reflection. My refusal to enable Nathan's addiction had not been selfish or cold, as my family had claimed. It had been an act of integrity, painful, but necessary. The healing was not complete. I still had moments of doubt, flashes of anger, periods of grief for the family relationships I had hoped for. But these emotions no longer controlled me or defined my self-worth. I had learned that walking away from toxic dynamics, even when they come wrapped in family obligations, can be the most loving choice for everyone involved. What would you do if your family demanded you sacrifice your financial security to enable someone else's self-destructive behavior? Would you have the courage to stand firm, even at the cost of family ties? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more tales of finding strength in difficult circumstances. Sometimes the family we choose becomes our greatest source of support when the family we were born into fails us. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your worth is never determined by those who cannot see your value.